To get going today, we've got a really important conversation that we have been discussing all week, and it surrounds interviewing prep, steps to successful interviewing. And we're going to be talking about both sides actually, with Mindy's expertise and experience in being with HR and with Bob's experience on being on the other side and helping career candidates really find fulfilling careers. And so our topic really again will be on highlighting interview preparation and best practices. Our
Mhm.
conversation will focus on proper preparation and a streamlined process for all involved. I'm joined today by one of my favorite co-hosts, Mr. Bob Britz, who's the co-founder of Career Coach Services and creator of Career Coach System, a proven process to help people find meaningful, fulfilling, and financially rewarding employment. He is an expert in human behavior and motivation and a results focused entrepreneur. Bob has unique approaches for helping job seekers in entry level, middle, and advanced phases of their careers. Welcome, Bob.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the time.
Awesome. And we're also joined by Mindy May, MBA certified career coach with Bob's Career Coach Services. So happy to have you on today, Mindy. You bring such a plethora of expertise and talent, and your experience are vast. And I am just really excited to have you on today as well. And if you both want to say a little something before we get started, this is your opportunity to share with our audience what you have to bring to the table.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoy doing these podcasts with you. And I think what I have to bring to the table is just my many, many, many years, 20 plus years of being the HR director of several different companies and really seeing what happens on the other side of the desk. For some reason, people just don't talk about this. It's like the best kept secret in hiring, but I don't think it should be. I think we should let people know what's expected of them and try to teach them how to do it. And a lot of these things people may not know. So that's why I'm here.
Well, for sure. And thank you for that, Mindy. And Bob, obviously you work together, and I know that you're newer to Career Coach Services, and just the times that we've been able to have our conversations and experiences together, I know you're going to I know you're going to thrive, and I know that you're going to help a lot of people find their fulfilling purposes and careers. So again, thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us today.
And the other thing I think about when I think about the interview process and so many of the things that we do in Career Coach Services, we're really teaching our clients the inside of the kimono, the things you don't know, the things you don't hear from both the HR side of what they're expecting and looking for, and what you can do to advance your interview process more effectively. But like Mindy said, you just don't know. It's not talked about that much. So we're really excited to be able to show you the inside scoop today on interviewing and how to succeed.
And you're so right about that. And Bob, I know that we go way back, and this is the secret playbook, the black book, if you will, on not only being able to prepare effectively for your interviewing journey, but also to be prepared for what is actually happening from two very experienced people that have had experiences on both sides, including myself, by the way. And I feel that there's so much here, and not only are we going to be talking about common perceptions, etc., but we're going to be talking about these topics with two people that can absolutely get you to where you need to go. So I'm really excited, and I'm honored to be a part of this panel. My name's Kevin. Thank you for joining me today on my event that we are really excited to share more about. So, Bob, let's talk about common perceptions not being accepted, moving forward. Effort doesn't equal results, and that most people are anxious. Can you both explore these highlighted topics, discussion points?
Sure. Mindy, why don't you take this?
Yeah, okay. So I think the most important thing for a candidate to know and to do when they come in for an interview is to feel confident. And there's several ways to do that. One is do your research, really know about the company. They're going to ask you if they're any good. They're going to ask you the all important question, what attracted you to our company? Why did you apply for this job? And the interviewee is going to need to say something that is really applicable and poignant, and that is going to show that they did their research on the company before coming there. Because I always like to warn people, they're seeing a lot of people, they're getting a lot of resumes. You have to stand out, and they want to know that you know about their company and that you care about them, and that's why you're there. So it's whether you do or not, I mean, you should, but fake it till you make it. You've got to leave that impression in order to be taken seriously as a candidate. So that's what I tell people to help them with their confidence. But I think that don't overplay your confidence either. I've had people come in that have sort of an arrogant know-it-all attitude, and that's not good either. You want to strut your stuff, but you want to be humble at the same time. It's very off-putting, especially to the human resources person who's looking for a culture fit. It's very off-putting if they come in acting like they're going to take over rather than acting like they're going to fit in. So I always caution people to express your knowledge, act like a pro, but at the same time be humble and find out what's going on at the company before you tell them what's going on at the company. So that usually helps.
We had a gal show up for a 6-figure interview in Hello Kitty pajama bottoms. Now, some people were like, well, that's not a big deal. That's, I don't think so, because that first impression is pretty important.
It really is. I've always felt that being inappropriately dressed was a definite no, even if they were a good candidate. I think it's really important to walk in there and present yourself professionally. Now, it's okay if you know that they're not a formal company, if they don't do business attire every day. You can come in a little more casually dressed. But let me put it this way, you can never be too overdressed for an interview unless you're wearing a formal or something. Come in a suit, looking as professional as possible for that interview, no matter what they wear on the job, because that's going to show that you're really interested and that you took the time to dress up like that to show your professionalism.
Well, it's the overall presentation as well, and if, not your Sunday best, but if your Sunday best is appropriate, then wear your Sunday best and own it. But also, like what you said earlier, the confidence, the overconfidence is probably a turnoff for a lot of companies too. They want a teammate. They want somebody that's going to have that humility, that wants to work as a team, and not maybe the shiny ball or the standout. And I really like the humility comment that you made. I think that's what we talked about yesterday, and that's a huge attribute, a great personality trait for sure.
Right. I think people maybe come into an interview thinking that they have to be a superstar, an instant superstar, and thinking that they have to shine above all others. But that's really not true. Most of the time, employers are looking for someone who's going to be a good member of a team. Almost all work is done on teams. So they want to know that you're going to come in and you're going to have your expertise, but you're also going to be open and willing to listen to what's going on and to listen to the creative ideas and feedback from your team members. So this is a really important thing to show too. And another thing I like to emphasize is just for people to really be themselves. Don't try to be something that you're not. Go in there with confidence, know what you have to offer, and show it. If it's not a fit, it's not a fit. You don't want to make yourself fit into something that isn't going to be right for you. That's a huge mistake. You may get the job, but you won't be happy. So don't be afraid to just completely be yourself. I always try to put people at ease. If we're doing a round of interviews, it usually starts with me as the HR director and ends with me as the HR director. And I will spend the first 5 minutes with small talk, just trying to make the person feel at ease. Like how I was in Los Angeles, so a common topic would be, how bad was the traffic getting here today? Did you have any trouble finding this place? Oh, you don't live too far away. How long have you been in LA? Stuff like this. And you can just see the tension level go all the way down to where you're just having a conversation with them and they start to feel at ease. And that's where I feel you get the best out of people.
Oh, for sure, and when you feel confident and you feel that it's, I would say if somebody came in rattled and nervous and that's showing me kind of their true colors, how are you gonna be when we've got a $4 million project that we're working on and you need to present to a customer to land that opportunity? I know it's something that can be learned, but in my experiences, I can't stress enough the value of practicing with your family or friends, these interviews, and really having that experience with somebody that might already intimidate you and go role play and go do that before you're doing it on an amazing opportunity that you don't want your nerves maybe to come out and be a factor.
Yes, absolutely. Mock interviews with a coach, for example, are a really good idea.
Now, do you do that? Does Career Coach do the mock services or the mock role playing?
Yes,
Abs-
absolutely. Mhm.
yeah, we don't not only do we do the interviews, we also look at the job that they're going for and compare it to the resume and show them where they're strong and where they're weak and where they have to shore it up to be successful. So they're not just doing a mock interview, they're doing a mock interview with the intention of improving for the job interview they're going to have the next day or so. So it's very important.
That might be a good event in the future, Bob. A
Yeah.
mock interview.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, okay,
Mhm.
well, that's great. Thank you, Mindy, for that.
You're
Cool.
welcome.
One of the things that I hear a lot about interviewing is that it's fearful. People are afraid. And most people don't realize this, but in your brain, the term fear and the term excitement are exactly the same emotion. It just depends on how you choose to route that into anxiety and other things. If you think about going up a roller coaster, right? You get strapped in and it starts going up that steep climb. It goes click, 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 click. Every click, you're getting more terrified, right? Because you
Yes.
know at the top of the clicks, it's going to go woo and go down. If you start thinking about how excited you are as you go up the click, 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 you'll go over the top. You won't have the sick feeling in your stomach, and you'll be screaming and laughing all the way down. You can literally change the way you respond by routing that in your brain. So, interviews should be exciting. You're meeting new people, you're learning about the company. It could be your next employer. If you walk in with those attitudes, a lot of the fear and anxiety goes away almost instantly. It's a very helpful tool that we encourage our clients to consider as they're practicing their interviews and also going out into the world. The mental part of this is just as important as the study part. You can study yourself into oblivion too on a company. You don't have to know everything about the company, but you should have a reason why you want to work there that's partially emotional to you. And I've had people all the way up to CEOs tell me that without that on the cover letter, the person's not going to be looked at because they don't know why they want to work there.
That is awesome, and you brought that up in our pre-meeting, and so, obviously, you've gotta do your homework on the company, and I know that you've got some amazing resources for that, say, salary or, I think, there's feedback tools that you can look at for companies, based on employees that have worked there that either they're still there or they're not there, and
Right.
what you just said is that when you are done with your interview, the "I want this job and here's why," correct? Is that something that absolutely needs to be said? And that
Yep.
you told us something, I'd like you to repeat it, what HR people have said to you that has made the difference. Would you mind sharing that with us again?
What HR people have said to me, can you refresh me on that thought a little bit?
Sure, sorry about that, Bob. Where there's a certain statement that candidates need to say before they
Oh,
walk out of that appointment, that
oh
interview.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. This is jumping a little bit ahead, but when you get to be about 10 minutes out of half an hour or 15 minutes out of an hour interview, it's always appropriate to say, could I just ask a question really quickly? And most interviewers, unless you're in a government interview with a union rep sitting there, most interviewers will go, sure. And the question is very easy to say. Is there anything you've heard today that would preclude me from moving forward in the interview process? And what it does, and then you pause, you don't say anything more, and the interviewer stops and thinks for a moment, and they probably have one or two things that were kind of like, that was a little bit yellow, that's been a little maybe those things are not going to be good. And what we found is that almost all the time, the interviewer has misconstrued the answer that the person gave to that particular question. They've talked to 25 people that day, or they've reviewed 100 interviews or whatever, and you're 430, and there's a good chance they didn't actually hear correctly what was said. And that gives you the opportunity as the interviewee to say, oh, I'm glad you brought that up. That wasn't what I meant. Here's how that would work out. And in so many cases, people have recovered from an interview that they were going to be not passed on because of a misconstruction of an idea that the interviewer had from something that they said. And they could have said it incorrectly. They could have mumbled it or whatever, but it gives them that chance to make the correction to keep themselves back in the game. It's very important to do that.
I love that, and you're right, I did jump ahead a little bit, but I think we could talk more about that when I'm supposed to talk about it when we're done, so
It's
so
fine. It's
No,
fine.
actually, I think that's a really important point is if you make a mistake in an interview or something gets misinterpreted, where do you go from there? Can you make up for that? Because it happens all the time. People are nervous. And I can give a good example of someone who came in to interview. She was very young, brilliant young woman, but she was super, super nervous. So nervous that in fact her voice was off. She was talking with like a shrill nervousness throughout the entire interview. And when I talked to the team later, they said that they really, really liked her, but they were concerned about how nervous she was. And I said, well, let me talk to her and we'll bring her back in for another interview. So I spoke to her and I said, look, you've got all the qualifications. You're what we're looking for, but we're really concerned. You seem so very, very nervous. What can I do to help you with that? If we bring you back in for a second interview so that you can come across in a way that seems more confident. And we had a conversation about that for like 10, 15 minutes. She came back in. She had completely calmed down. She got the job and she turned out to be just a stellar employee. I follow her on everything. She's so interesting. She's like a mathematical genius as well as a beauty contest winner. She was just a really, really interesting person. And yet she was super nervous because she really wanted the job. So I think all potential employees that are on an interview should realize that if the company has called you in there to sit in their offices and spend time with you, they want the interview to go well. They are not trying to trip you up. They have looked at 100 resumes. They've narrowed it down to maybe 5, the people that they're bringing in, and they really want you to be the person. They really do. And if they're good, they will give you every opportunity to shine. And especially when you're with the HR director, look for clues there as to what you think the rest of the interviewers are going to expect and pick up on the tone of the situation and go with that. Assume that they have your best interests in mind. I think that'll really help.
Yeah,
Well, I
I would
think
totally agree. I totally agree.
well, the interview process, right, it's what you're made out of, right? Even if you're meeting with just you, Mindy, not just
Mhm.
you, but an HR
Right.
personnel person, or you're going on to the next one or the next one, the next one. And I think that that's really the other thing I want to say is career coach services can help with all of this, where you actually, when you're working with career coach services, you get the opportunity to sit in those offices. Whereas maybe if you're doing this on your own and doing the LinkedIn applying process, which is great, it's usually you're going to be sitting with about 600 other applicants. So the career coach services, I've seen it time and time again. And Bob, I want to highlight this because it's one of my favorite points of data is that you've successfully have placed over, I say now, 9,000 professionals in fulfilling careers. So you guys know what you're doing. And if you are looking at really taking this job search seriously and stop wasting your time and doing this independently, Career Coach Services can absolutely put you in those seats to have these opportunities, to have these interviews in person. So that was a shameless plug for
Very good.
Career
Thank you.
Coach
Thank you,
Services, but
Evelyn.
I believe in this.
Sure.
I highly believe in this. And so, all right. So our next one is, I think that asking good questions. Are we to that point yet?
We are. In
Good.
fact,
Okay.
there's a couple types of questions that come up for people. One of them is getting asked an illegal question, a question they shouldn't be asking. That can be something as simple as, do you own a car, when the job does not require you to drive for the job. That is actually a protected class question for that. But people ask questions all the time unknowingly that are not appropriate questions. Oh, I see you have an H-1 visa. Are you going to be returning to China in the next year?
Oh my.
That's totally, oh no, it gets better. It gets better. I had one. I was interviewing, and the person that asked the questions asked the candidate if they were gay.
Oh, wow.
Now today that may not be such a big deal, but in 1985, not a good question to be asking anybody. It's just not appropriate. It's not germane to the job,
No.
right? It have nothing to do with the job.
Right.
And so when people get asked these questions, what do you do? Because you're on the spot to answer the question, but you don't want to answer the question, and you shouldn't answer the question. And the way that we get around it is something called reversing. And so if Mindy would ask me a question that was inappropriate, I'd say, Mindy, that's a very interesting question. Can you share with me more what you're looking for in an answer? It's a very polite way to tender it back to them, give you time to think, hopefully give them time to think that that was not the right question to be asking. And if they ask it again, you can say, I'm still not really clear what you're looking for in an answer. And you're giving it back to them almost the same way. On the third time, if they don't get it, they're pretty dense. And then you say, I'm just not comfortable answering the question.
Yeah.
But it gives you a polite way to let them know that you feel it's in an appropriate questions. So reversing is a great way to do in the interview anywhere. Someone asks you a complex question about the pressure valves on the tanks for the oil companies. What should they be set for? And you can say, well, that's a great question. Can you tell me how that's relevant to the job discussion that we're having right now? And they'll tell you more about it. Oh, okay, well, great. Well, here's what the answer is. It gives you time to reverse the question, a few seconds to think, and have a much better answer, and you maintain more control in the interview process. A lot of times people will say, you should come to an interview with a couple really good questions to ask. And you really should. You should have probably 5. Because the reason I say 5 is because typically in the interview, in the introduction about the company, things like that, 2 or 3 of those are going to get already answered. So you don't want to leave yourself with one question. You want to have maybe 2 or 3 that you can ask. Now, if you're having a hard time coming up with these questions, you can go to ChatGPT, openai.com, and type in, what are the 3 great questions I should ask, this oil company about their, practices. And you'll get some pretty good answers back that you can either keep or modify, but at least you have a place to go when you're showing up. You're not wondering whether you're asking a dumb question. There really are no dumb questions. So keep that in mind as you go forward. And the last thing, go ahead. And the last thing is that question of, have you heard anything today that would preclude me from moving forward in the process? You always want to finish with that. And then to Mindy's point, the last thing you say, period, is, I would love to work with you guys. I would love to have this job. And I encourage people to use the word love. It's a very softening word. It's colloquial, it's endearing, and it's sincere. So I would love to work with you guys.
I would agree on that too, Bob. And I would say there's a couple things that you are not obligated to answer any question, even if it's a qualifying one that makes you feel uncomfortable. I love the reversing tactic and concept. I think that's brilliant. And Also, if you're being asked those type of questions that are making you already feel uncomfortable, then that might be a good consideration factor for it not being a good fit for you if that's already how you're maybe being treated from the interview process. Most interviews that I have been on have been very classy, and I have never really been asked a question that is inappropriate or out of sorts. But I would say that, bottom line is you're not obligated to answer a question um, of that nature. Would you agree with that?
I don't think you're obligated, but I think that there is a certain finesse that you can use to not answer it and illustrate that it's probably not appropriate. If you're able to do that, it saves, because what happens is if you get nervous and give the answer to that question, it drops your mojo because you've had to do something you didn't want to do, and that's really terrible. And they don't need to have the answer to that question. So if the more you're able to finesse it away, um, and the last thing I think I would say, and Mindy, maybe you can think of a better way to say this, but I would say is, well, I appreciate the question, but I'm just not comfortable answering that.
Oh, I like that. That is a good statement too. And
Well, right. I think another good thing to say is, are you asking that because you want to know, blah, 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 blah. Find out what they're really asking. Find
Right.
out, like you said, reverse it, turn it around. Oh, are you trying to see if I'm a stable person or something like that? Like you can get beyond the discriminatory, illegal question, which most questions that are illegal on an interview, it is going to be because they're discriminatory.
Yeah.
And just say, oh, did you want to know if I'm blah, 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 whatever, so that it's what they're really trying to find out instead
Mhm.
of asking you something so blatantly inappropriate.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a good tool for the entire interview, like you said, Bob. What are they really trying to find out? Some people don't know how to ask direct questions.
That's right. Even the good questions can be misconstrued by the interviewee because
Yes.
the interviewer didn't ask it right.
Right.
That's a very interesting question. Are you speaking about tank pressure? Or are you talking about grounds maintenance? I'm not quite clear.
I
And
like
that
that.
you're just kind of reshaping and reshaping. And I will never go to a place in a question where it's inappropriate. I will always find a way to soften it, accept the question. That's an interesting question. However, I just don't feel comfortable answering it today.
I
And
do like that.
I think that's legit.
yeah, compliment, result. You always compliment them on the question, and then you say, "I'm just not particularly comfortable answering that."
So there was a couple questions that I really liked. I think I spoke with Mindy previously on this, where the questions you would bring in, these are also processes that you guys can help candidates with. This is not something that I feel that you almost need to have a career coach to go through these now, especially now with so much competition out there and so many unemployed professionals out there doing the same thing as you are. You need to invest in yourself and get a coach, because doing it alone, it would be like getting a college uh, referral to be accepted to a college. Perhaps you're going to be seen in a better light because you're more prepared. You know what questions to ask, you know what questions to answer, and overall you're just going to look so much more professional and polished and confident going into this. The ratio and the I would say the success ratio of you landing a job with a coach and without a coach, I would imagine there's quite the disparity. I don't know if you've got that data, Bob, but I'd love to hear it if you do. And I like the question about asking about culture. How is culture? And are you big with philanthropy? How are your team events? Are those are really, really important to me. And I feel that a lot of people are kind of moving towards that as obviously. And how many managers am I going to be managed by? If I'm going to be managed by 8, in which I was personally, you're just going to be set up for failure. So those are the 2 questions personally that I like to answer. What are your thoughts on those? And am I on base, or is that something appropriate?
No, I think you're absolutely on base. I mean, nowadays there's a lot of talk and a lot of articles written about work-life balance. So I think that's a perfectly fine way of putting it in an interview. What is the work-life balance here in
Yeah.
the culture of this company? Usually people will respect that. And in fact, if they like you and they're trying to sell the company to you, which they most likely are, if they brought you in for an interview, they're going to want to brag about what a great work-life balance that company has.
Hmm.
So I think those kind of questions, maybe in the past were might seem a little needy or like someone who doesn't really want to work. It's not looked at like that anymore. And a lot of companies are realizing the benefits of letting people know that when they're at work, they're at work. When they're at home, they're at home. And that's the kind of culture they like to have. They like a balanced culture. More often than not, I think you'd get a very good response if you ask that question.
Excellent. And Bob, I know that you mentioned that I jumped the gun a little bit earlier, but asking for the job, say you'd
Yep.
love to work there. We cannot reiterate that enough. And I feel that that's something that don't be
Hmm.
afraid. You are interviewing the company as much as they are interviewing you. And if you
Absolutely.
show that you want to, have a second date, say it. And have that communicated because you certainly don't want to walk out of that office and like, why didn't I say that? Why,
Right.
so be mindful of those two questions. Say, you're asking for the job, you'd love to work there, and what are the next steps? Or
Hmm.
what was the exact phrase you mentioned earlier for the next steps?
Um, is there anything that, next steps would be, is there anything that you've heard today that would preclude me from moving forward in the interview process? And that gets the conversation started. I would love to work there is another statement that you want to drop in. And before you finish, though, you want to make sure you ask what the rest of the interview process will look like. Because people complain about getting ghosted. Well, they may be ghosted for 2 weeks because they're going through 600 other candidates. They have to get through them all. And then when will this be concluded? When do you expect to make your hire? Those are very tactical, practical things to say after you give them the emotional, I would love to work here statement.
Right.
So
Love
you
it.
got to sandwich them a bit.
I always liked it when people would say, "I've been doing, quite an extensive search, and after everything I've heard here today, I'm convinced that this is really the place I'd like to work."
That's great.
Ooh.
When somebody says something like that, I'm like, "Mhm, yes, good
Hmm.
answer."
And
Mhm.
and it doesn't hurt to do over research. This is your life. This is going to be your
Right.
career where you're going to be spending a lot of time and effort and just do the research because the more you know, you might learn things that you didn't know before that may even be more of an inspiration to partner with that particular employer. So I love this. Bob, I think that that was what we were kind of going to end on are those two, the asking for the job. Are
Yeah.
there any comments that we missed or that you'd like to
Well,
explore more on?
yeah, there's one piece that this is kind of coming from being someone who's interviewed a lot. And I had 13 jobs before I stopped my practice when I was 45 and started the career coach business. And through those 13 jobs, I had only interviewed with one company each time. I got the job every single time I interviewed. Now, I'm good at interviewing, but I can't be that good. And part of it was my network was helping me introduce me into the companies, which is a product that we actually work with Career Coach Services. But the interesting thing about it that I learned in the interview process is that the interviewer is also this thing called a human being. And human beings come prepared sometimes. Human beings show up, they haven't even read the resume sometimes, particularly if they're a upper management person who gets sucked into a interview process and they sit down, they're staring at the resume and asking you questions. And it's like you prepared yourself through the eyeballs and they just have a chance to look at your resume 10 minutes before the meeting. So you have to realize this is a two-way street. You're always working with someone who actually does want to help you move forward, particularly the HR does. And you have to give that give and pull in your own expectations with people to maybe they don't meet your expectations when you sit down in front of them, but you have to work with it and convince them that you're still the right candidate to work with the company. Don't be discouraged if you walk in and the person's disheveled. They may be the decision maker, they're just disheveled. You just never know.
They're
So
probably stressed.
yeah, but and I don't want to compare it to dating, but it kind of is because you're meeting
Yeah,
someone for the first time. You're deciding if you like them, are they dressed well, all this stuff, and people ignore a lot of that. They think I can show up in the pajamas. They think that they can put things on their LinkedIn that are controversial and no one's going to care. And you
Right.
just very, very conscious of these things because you're being looked at from all these angles to see if you're a fit for that company.
and remember, LinkedIn is 3+ million strong of opportunity for you to study not only the company, but the people in the company. And you might, I know that you specialize, I know that Career Coach Services specialize in leaning on the network and all the processes that are associated with that to get, your first connections ideally and the introduction to the companies in which they are employed. But I would say that if maybe it might not be necessarily the company that you want to work for, maybe it's the person you want to work for. So, research them, research what their background is and where they've been. I feel that I'm always so pleasantly surprised when I dig in a little bit deeper on someone's profile where I just connected with them and like, oh, what are they about? It's like, whoa, or whoa. And so, study not only the company and their stocks and all that and the history and locations and growth, et cetera, but study the people that might be possibly the leaders of that organization and
Mhm.
maybe that might be your future mentor. And so I look further than just the company aspects of your research. Really dig in and look at the departments perhaps and look at the people that are involved, especially the human resources or the marketing department or the sales department, et cetera. It's vast. So do your research. I would say spend between 2 to 6 hours on each company. If that's what you want to do, be prepared. Bottom
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you wanted to add to this conversation, Mindy or Bob? Because I know that we're up for time here, and I think that we've covered some great ground on interviewing prep. And if there's anything that obviously any of us can help you with, we're all available on LinkedIn. My name's Kevin Paskos. I'm joined by Bob Britz and Mindy May, and we would absolutely love the opportunity to work with you. So if you wouldn't mind sending us a personalized DM if you would like more information, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And I want to conclude with anything that you want to add to that for Career Coach Services and embellish upon this opportunity. It's you. Go for it.
I can think of one thing that we didn't mention that would probably really be helpful to candidates is come prepared to answer the all scary and important question of what kind of salary are you looking
Oh,
for?
yes.
It's a scary question, but you can do your research on it. There's so many sources that you can look online. You can find out, you can compare it to the last salary you were making. You can give a range. You can be very specific, but be prepared to answer the question. It's an important question. You don't want to deflect and evade it. You may price yourself out of the job or you may underprice yourself. Those are the risks, and that's where the research comes in. But either way, it's part of your commitment to the interview to answer it. So give that some real good thought.
Cool.
I think that we should have an open interview. I think that that would be really neat to see and have Mindy be our interviewer. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah,
Do
that'd
you
be
think
cool.
do you think we'd get the job?
I do,
I don't
actually.
know.
So you guys will make it easy for me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate both of you again joining me today. And I always forget to introduce myself and tell everyone kind of what I do as well. But I support Bob and Mindy and Career Coach Services because I'm a big fan of advocating for not only women but professionals that are looking to grow their career and to advance their career opportunities. And this is really important for me, not only because I've been on the other side of the interview process, but to be able to teach this to others that are serious about their future careers and really sharing awareness about the possibilities and opportunities to get involved with Career Coach Services, Bob and Mindy and his team, and get best aligned with that, and go get your job, find your passion and purpose, and find it with these guys, because Bob and I have known each other for almost 19 years. Mindy, we're new, but I believe in his product and I believe in his offerings. And, obviously how I can help, I work in the construction ICT industry, and I am a marketing strategist, and I help companies accelerate and build their growth revenue well into the future. So if there's anything that the three of us can help you with, we are here for you 24/7. Not really, but we can answer calls during normal business hours. But LinkedIn is on 24/7. So please feel free to reach out to us. LinkedIn, underneath our profile pictures, you'll find contact information, and we do look forward to hearing from you. So again, thanks, great chat, and I hope you both have a wonderful Friday. Have a great weekend, and as we lead into the Thanksgiving holiday, be safe out there, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. Same to you.
Awesome.
Bye,
Have
everyone.
a
Bye,
nice
Take care.
day.
everybody.